It was an ordinary Tuesday morning at Willow Creek Elementary, a quiet school in a small town in Ohio. The students were busy with their assignments when Miss Carter, the fifth-grade teacher, noticed one of her students, Emily, hesitating near her desk. The girl's hands trembled slightly as she leaned in and whispered something so softly that Miss Carter had to strain to hear. The moment the words left Emily's lips, a chill ran down Miss Carter's spine. Her heart pounded as she locked eyes with the frightened girl. Without hesitation, she stood up and reached for the classroom phone. There was no doubt in her mind. She had to call the police immediately. Miss Carter forced herself to stay calm as she dialed 911, her fingers slightly shaking. She glanced at Emily, who stood frozen beside her desk, her wide eyes darting toward the classroom door as if expecting someone to burst in at any moment. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher answered. Miss Carter lowered her voice, careful not to alarm the other students. This is Miss Carter from Willow Creek Elementary. One of my students just told me something concerning. I need officers here immediately. The dispatcher's tone shifted. Can you tell me what the child said? Miss Carter turned toward Emily, silently asking for permission. The girl gave a tiny nod. She said, "He's coming for me after school. He said no one can stop him this time." A tense pause. Then, the dispatcher spoke firmly. "Stay on the line. Officers are on their way. Do not let the child leave your sight." Miss Carter swallowed hard. Understood. She put the phone down just as the classroom door creaked open. Emily gasped. Miss Carter turned, her heart hammering. And there, standing in the doorway, was a man she didn't recognize. The man in the doorway was tall, wearing a faded denim jacket and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. His expression was unreadable, but something about the way he stood there, silent, unmoving, sent a wave of unease through Miss Carter. "Can I help you?" she asked, keeping her voice even. She positioned herself slightly in front of Emily, shielding the girl without making it obvious. The man's gaze flickered around the classroom before settling on Emily. "I'm here to pick up my daughter," he said, his voice flat. Miss Carter's stomach tightened. Emily had never mentioned a father before. "I'm sorry, but all student pickups have to go through the front office," she replied calmly, hoping the school's strict policy would buy some time. The man's jaw tightened. "She's coming with me." Before Miss Carter could respond, the classroom phone rang, startlingly loud in the tense silence. She took a step back and answered. "This is Officer Reynolds with the Fairview Police Department," a voice said on the other end. "We're 2 minutes out. Keep him there." Miss Carter exhaled, gripping the receiver tightly. "Sir," she said, turning back to the man, "I really need you to check in with the front office. It's school policy." The man took a step forward. Emily whimpered. Miss Carter's pulse pounded. She knew she had only seconds to keep the situation from escalating. Then, from down the hall, the sound of heavy footsteps approached. The footsteps grew louder, quick and purposeful. Miss Carter's heart pounded as she saw 2 uniformed police officers appear at the classroom door. "Sir, step away from the child," one of the officers commanded, his voice firm but controlled. The man stiffened, his hands clenched at his sides. "She's my daughter," he said, his voice low. "I have every right to take her." One officer, a tall man with a badge reading Reynolds, took a careful step forward. "We can talk about that, but first we need you to come with us." Miss Carter felt Emily press closer against her. The girl was trembling, her small fingers gripping the fabric of Miss Carter's sleeve. The second officer, a woman with sharp eyes, kept her hand near her holster. "We just want to make sure everything is in order, sir," she added. "Let's step outside." The man hesitated. His gaze flickered between Emily and the officers. Then, without a word, he turned and walked into the hallway. The officers followed, one keeping a hand near his radio. Miss Carter let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Emily," she whispered, kneeling beside the girl. "It's okay now. You're safe." But Emily shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "No," she choked out. "He said he wasn't alone." At that moment, a loud noise echoed from the front of the school. A door slamming, voices shouting. Miss Carter's blood ran cold. Something wasn't right, and the danger wasn't over. Miss Carter's breath caught in her throat. She stood up quickly, her protective instinct kicking in. Emily clung to her sleeve, her small fingers trembling. Outside the classroom, the voices grew louder. The police officers' radios crackled with urgent chatter. Possible second suspect, front entrance, male, dark hoodie, attempting to gain access. Officer Reynolds turned sharply toward his partner. "Stay with him. I'm going to the front." The man in the denim jacket, still standing in the hallway, tensed. His expression darkened as he realized what was happening. "I told you, she's my daughter," he muttered. The female officer didn't move her hand from her holster. "Sir, you need to stay right where you are." Inside the classroom, Miss Carter's mind raced. If there was another person trying to get inside the school, that meant Emily was in more danger than they thought. She knelt beside the girl. "Emily, listen to me. Who else is here? Who is he talking about?" Tears streaked Emily's face as she whispered, "My mom's boyfriend. He said if I told anyone, he'd make sure no one could stop him." Miss Carter's stomach dropped. The second suspect wasn't just trying to take Emily. He was willing to hurt people to do it. From down the hallway, a voice shouted, "Hey, stop right there," followed by the unmistakable sound of someone running. The female officer stiffened. "Lock the door. Now." Miss Carter's hands were already moving, sliding the deadbolt into place. She turned off the lights, motioning for the other students to stay quiet. The children, sensing the seriousness of the moment, huddled together near the bookshelves. Emily buried her face in Miss Carter's sleeve, her sobs muffled. Outside, the chaos escalated. Heavy footsteps pounded against the tile floors. A male voice cursed loudly. A struggle. A thud. Then silence. Miss Carter strained to listen, her heart hammering. The radio crackled again. "Suspect is in custody." Relief washed over her in waves, but she knew it wasn't over yet. She held Emily close, whispering, "You're safe now." But the girl barely nodded, her body still tense. Because deep down they both knew this wasn't just a random incident. This was something much bigger. And Emily's nightmare wasn't over yet. Minutes felt like hours as Miss Carter kept her arms wrapped protectively around Emily. Outside, police officers moved swiftly through the hallways, their voices hushed but urgent. The school had gone into full lockdown, with students and teachers sheltering in place. Finally, a soft knock at the classroom door made Miss Carter jump. "Miss Carter? It's Officer Reynolds." She hesitated, then peeked through the small window. Seeing his badge and steady gaze, she carefully unlocked the door. The officer stepped in, his expression serious but calm. "The second suspect has been detained. The immediate threat is over." Miss Carter exhaled, tension draining from her body, but Emily still clung to her, unmoving. Reynolds crouched to her level. "Emily, you're safe now, but we need to ask you a few questions. Would you be okay talking to me?" The girl didn't respond right away. Then slowly she nodded. Miss Carter gave her an encouraging squeeze before Emily let go and allowed Reynolds to guide her into the hallway. As Miss Carter stepped out with them, she caught sight of the man in the denim jacket. He was now handcuffed, sitting against the wall, his expression unreadable. Down the corridor, another man, taller, rougher looking, with a dark hoodie, was being led outside by two officers. His face was red with anger, his wrists bound. Reynolds led Emily to a quieter area near the school office, where a female officer knelt beside her. "Emily," the officer said gently, "can you tell us what's been happening?" The girl hesitated, then took a shaky breath. "He's not my dad," she said, pointing at the man in denim. Miss Carter's heart clenched. Emily continued, her voice small but clear. "My mom. She went away a few weeks ago. She told me to stay quiet and do whatever he said. But then he started talking about taking me somewhere else." Her hands clenched into fists. "I didn't want to go." Reynolds exchanged a look with his partner. "Emily, do you know where your mom is now?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know. She was scared. She told me everything would be okay. But she never came back." A deep silence followed. Reynolds' partner spoke softly. "Emily, we're going to help you find her. I promise." The girl wiped her eyes. "Please," she whispered. Miss Carter's chest ached. She had sensed something was wrong, but she never imagined it was this bad. Reynolds stood, his expression grim. "We need to get child services involved, and we need to find out what happened to her mother." Miss Carter nodded. She looked down at Emily, her small body still shaking. This wasn't over. The next few hours passed in a blur. The school remained under lockdown until the police confirmed there was no further threat. Parents arrived one by one, anxious to take their children home. But Emily had no one waiting for her. Miss Carter stayed by her side, refusing to leave her alone. When the officers took Emily to the police station for further questioning, Miss Carter insisted on going with her. In a small, quiet room at the station, Emily sat with a warm blanket around her shoulders, clutching a stuffed animal given by one of the officers. She looked exhausted but calmer. Reynolds sat across from her. "Emily, we found out something important." He hesitated before continuing. "Your mother didn't just disappear. She was trying to get away." Emily's eyes widened. "She's alive." Reynolds nodded. "She's in a shelter for women in danger. She was afraid for both of you, so she went into hiding. She didn't think she could take you with her safely." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. "She didn't leave me?" Miss Carter reached over and gently squeezed the girl's hand. "No, sweetheart," she said softly. "She was trying to protect you." Emily wiped her face, a mix of emotions playing across it: relief, sadness, and something that looked like hope. Reynolds continued, "Your mom has been in contact with authorities. Now that we have you safe, we can bring her back." Emily let out a shaky breath. "Can I see her?" The officer smiled. "Very soon." It wasn't long before the reunion happened. Emily's mother, a woman with tired eyes but a strong presence, ran into the room and pulled her daughter into a tight embrace. Emily sobbed into her mother's chest, clinging to her like she never wanted to let go. Miss Carter felt tears sting her own eyes. After everything, Emily was finally safe. Reynolds gave Miss Carter a nod of appreciation. "You saved her life today." Miss Carter shook her head. She saved herself. She was brave enough to speak up. As mother and daughter held onto each other, the weight of the day slowly began to lift. The danger had passed. The wounds would take time to heal, but for the first time in a long time, Emily was no longer afraid. And that was the most important thing of all.